Welcome to PM Express Business Edition. We've seen the economic numbers improve. Inflation is coming down. The city recently saw some marginal stability, but we've seen some blips in the third quarter of this year. But how are all these economic indicators impacting on businesses? Or let's say, has the cost of doing business actually improved, or it is still getting somehow bad? Recently, we engaged the Beverage Association, and they were raising concerns about how sales have dropped by about 70%. How is this true on the ground when it comes to how the industrial sector is faring currently? Has all these positive numbers impacted greatly on businesses, or is more of business as usual? Well, on PM Express Business Edition, we look at the state of doing business in Ghana here today. When you talk about the industries, the manufacturing firms and businesses, all these issues wrapped up on PM Express Business Edition as I engage the President, Association of Ghana Industries, Dr. Humphrey Ayimdake, who is joining me here in studio. He is also a businessman, he's an industrialist as well. I mean, combine all these things, it's better to gauge the pulse of the industrial sector, manufacturing sector, and how they are doing right now. Welcome to PM Express Business. Let's give you some numbers here in terms of what has been the situation. Let's first start with the Monetary Policy Committee and where they have actually come from, where the rate was previously. You can see the numbers in terms of 27, 28, 28, 25, and now 21. Some are saying that it could even come down further. I'll be getting the President, Association of Ghana Industries, thoughts on the monetary policy rate and whether they could have done better than what they are doing based on what the inflation numbers are saying right now as well. So let's look at inflation as well and see where we came from. I mean, in terms of the beginning of the year, about 23.5%, 22.4%, 13%, and now 12%. I mean, what we are picking up, there are strong indications that we could hit that single digit before the close of this year. And what would that mean for the cost of credit and even doing business, and even for consumption patterns of consumers as well, and how it affects industries and manufacturing firms out there? Let's also look at the exchange rates, and some would say the biggest elephant in the room. We were somewhere around 15.1, 15.52 Ghana cedis. We came to 10.55, 10.32, and now you can see that, depending what you're doing with the commercial bank rates, looking at 12.34, Forex brews are doing about 13.60. And if you've seen the graph, are we getting to the true level of the cedi, or Bank of Ghana has to come in again and actually help in stabilizing the Ghana cedi? Is it good for they to intervene on the market to try and firmly stabilize the Ghana cedi or not? So let's look at GDP as well, where we've come from in terms of growth. 2024 June, look at where we were, we went up, and then look at the current growth rate. If you look at the oil growth rate, 6.3. Some are saying that is quite a strong growth. And also, if you look at the non-oil, 7.8. Some will argue that it tells you how the economy is diversified now, that even without oil, we are growing at 7.8. But how has all these things impacted on industry? Because look at the industry numbers in terms of expansion, it wasn't that good. So these are the numbers for you as we zoom in into our discussion as well. So those are the data in terms of these numbers, setting the pace and engaging the President of the Association of Ghana Industries, Dr. Humphrey Ayimdake. He's a businessman, he's an industrialist, and it's good to have me here on studio as we talk about doing business in Ghana here. But Doc, how are you doing? I know it's been a very busy week for you. I mean, knowing the other things that you do.
That's correct.
It's been quite rough.
That's correct, but the grace is sufficient.
But again, combining business, combining association duties, and all the other things how are you manage the situation?
Well, one of the belief systems I have is that tax a busy man, he'll share his duties accordingly and satisfy every bit of his responsibilities. Once upon a time when I was in Rotary, that was one of the slogans of Rotary. So it's worth it. We manage our times effectively and to satisfy every constituency that we belong to. So we are most grateful for opportunities.
Let me first start with you on the policy rate. I mean, It came down to about 12.9%. and we'll try to see whether we can get the graphs back on the screen. And it came down to 12 point, about coming down. No, the policy rate is not at 12, so that was inflation, sorry. I mean, it has come down. For you as industries, I know that cost of capital is quite critical for you guys in doing business and the impact of this. We've not seen the commercial banks yet respond to this. The Bank of Ghana says that, well, we're looking at before the close of this month, they should start responding. Let me first get your thoughts on the policy rate reduction by the Bank of Ghana. Looking at the 300 basis point that they brought down, and if you look at the cut from 28 or 25, about more than 600 basis points over the past 3 months. Yeah. For you, is that good?
It could have been better. It could have been better. And you realize that the voting rights, I'm told the majority vote was about
4 out of 6.
Thank you. So we were expecting something in the teens, between 19, 18, 19 would have been the best target. But I mean, they're being cautious, considering where we're coming from, a few underlying factors and threats that they believe could derail this. But I think they've got some comfort targeting the year. I recall in one of my engagements in the MPC report, the activities, a technical report, and that which came out was the concern about the tariffs. What is likely to happen if the tariffs rates were that high? And the last quarter tariff that came out was about 1.14. 1.14. And I therefore believe that the intent of the BOG and the fiscal to attain a single digit is possible. So for the close of year, I guess they'd be on the right path. And that is signaling a lot of confidence in the economic front. So the policy rate, we could have done an 18 or 19. That could have been a reasonable figure. But let's see what happens by close of year. And then that then sets the tone for the incoming year, where we'll see a lot of uncertainties that we believe the trajectory will follow with fiscal prudence, monetary policy indicators, and we hope other factors that we'll discuss.
Do you think that they will have no excuse in their November deliberations because now the fear was the utility tariffs?
That was one of the
1.14.
1.14, that was one of the flags.
Now they've seen all the shocks.
Yes.
Now they can do a huge cut in their next meeting
well,
in November.
From between 21 plus to 18, that another 200 to 300 will be significant to set the benchmark for the incoming year.
What are you looking for at their next meeting in November?
I'm looking for an 18.5.
So that'll be about 300 or...
Between that's 21 plus to about 250 thereabout. Yeah, they should be daring. And I guess they are men of ambitious and good drive to reset the economy. And that is one of the...
Because you think that they will have no excuse this time
because
around. I won't use it as an excuse, because when you go through the minutes of the Monetary Policy Committee, you realize that majority of the members were worried about inflation outlook.
That's correct.
They were worried about the tariffs and the impact on the cost of doing business.
Yes.
So they were more of a cautionary approach.
That's correct.
In dealing with this thing. Now you've seen the tariffs.
It's all out of the bag. So now go for it.
There are no threats now.
That's right.
The city's rate of sharp depreciation is, and I stand to use my words carefully, the rate of depreciation is slowing a little
Absolutely.
bit. So they could do even about 300 of one.
Well, let's still be cautious. Now that the tariff threat, which was one of the flags, is out of the place, and rectifying the issues regarding the remittances and the various inflows, even though December season has a lot of spikes, all the way to February of next year. I believe setting the benchmark by close of year with a single digit inflationary figure, policy rate comes down, we reset the economy for the 2026 agenda. And then one other thing that will also be, we need to look out for is the budget. The budget is also give us some direction regarding the big
I'll be coming back on your expectations, because the minister promised us in a recent interview that he is working, even doing in October.
Yes.
All other things being equal. But let's come to the policy, because I want you to put on your cap, being a businessman and industrialist as well, before we come to AGI.
Okay.
What has been that transmission mechanism when BOG really brings down their rate, i.e. the commercial banks responding, and then that impacting on your cost of credit? Because there are some businesses that have complained that even though the Ghana reference rate comes down, they still do not feel the corresponding reduction in the cost of lending. Let me speak to you as a business person, as an industrialist that you are. How critical is this reduction in the policy rate going forward mean for you when it comes to the real impact of lending rate and cost of credit going down?
Well, that's a high expectation. Engaging the governor, he's very optimistic that in his tenure, lending rates will really drop. What has been the case, prices reduction or lending rates in reduction, there are other factors in the formula that the commercial banks uses. And then the non-performing loan has been one of the biggest.
Inflation is one, treasury bills rate is another,
yes.
You know, and all those things. So if all these indicators show that
are trending downwards, we have high expectation. And I think the BOG also did one thing that I thought was quite interesting by making sure that the GESL, being one of the guaranteeing schemes, hence the guaranteeing provision can be collateralized with the Bank of Ghana. So therefore, it's stirring a lot of interest within the commercial banks to step up to the plate to do real banking and proper lending. And as the events play out, as the inflation trends goes down, and the policy and the T-bills goes down, that is why I'm urging that we should get about 18.5%. And therefore, that will stir and give the models of the banking industry another look. That these are new era, new times, a resetting agenda, and possibly we should see the pricing of funding and access to funding coming downwards to stimulate the economy.
Do you think that the commercial banks, again, and using the words of they would not have any excuse to go down on the rate, because in the past, even though the Ghana reference rate comes down, the real cost of credit out there from the banks is still high. And that's why I'm asking that.
That's correct.
For you, have you seen in the past the banks responding?
Yeah.
That
it's been slow.
Optimistic that this time round, when the Bank of Ghana even has gone down on this, we are yet to see the Ghana reference rate come down. I stand to be corrected.
Yes.
Are you seeing the banks responding, or listen, they need to show good faith in the how to respond to this?
So that's why I gave you an example of one of the triggers of the credit guarantee schemes that BOG has given further assurance to the bank. Besides the GESL, the DBG one that is coming up, is also going to stimulate the banks to do more lending, because all such funds that will be underwritten by such guarantee schemes will give them that freedom and the capacity to go out there and be more daring, complementary all the macro gains and the drive of BOG and the fiscal consolidation that is happening. Within that context, the banks will be they'll be positioned. They have no other choice than to come to the market, because the lending, the T-bill rates also is another factor that it's shaping their thoughts and their lending model. Real banking is coming to the table, and we in the industry space and business believe that definitely it will trend downwards. So we need those other factors, and that will speak to, i.e., the regulatory authorities. Because amidst all these gains that have been attained within this period, the flip side, or the derailing factors that may come to the table, are the role of the various regulatory authorities supporting industry. And in our recent industrial summit, we stated the role of the Tree Crop Authority, for one, regulating the rubber industry, regulating the cashew industry. How are you making sure that all these products in this value chain are stabilized enough to lead to production in the various factories? Those are the productive sectors that GESL will write a guarantee scheme to support ADB, to support any of the commercial banks, to do further injection, to create jobs, to stimulate productivity, and then the export of processed goods, not of raw materials. So the regulatory authorities in there, and what is the role of customs? Making sure that products that are coming into Ghana, by virtue of the reasonable stability of the exchange rate, import is now cheap. And in our last quarter business barometer, it is evident that significant imports coming in as a result of these dynamics are increasing. What is the effect on our businesses? It leads to shrinking of your local market. Finished goods are coming in. We are not scared of competition, but what's the role of the Standards Authority in terms of quality? What's the role of Food and Drugs Authority in terms of making sure standards are met? The role of the, EPA, and the role of the customs in terms of under-invoicing, smuggling of goods, and parallel goods that are coming to Ghana by virtue of proximity. Products like Guinness, what do you call it, Malta Guinness, and other associated products that are coming through the border, whilst we have similar factories here. So at this stage, our prayer is that the regulatory authorities that are supposed to complement the work of Bank of Ghana in the macro space, the fiscal prudence that is happening to stimulate the economy is crucial. They need to relook at their mandates, and the various mandates should be in sync with stabilizing and creating the harmonious competitive front for industry to thrive.
You talked about GESEL and the non-performing loans, and I want to throw back this into you again, more pushing it today as a businessman and industrialist as well. The commercial banks, I know they are not, I mean, for the Christmas, and have they been that supportive of industries and manufacturing firms in terms of credit and lending?
There. We know in the AGI we have the large scale that benefit from their portfolio and their capacity to do the GRR. And then we have the medium to mid SME, that for majority of the enterprises in Ghana, and that's why we say Ghana is a largely SME market. So each of them has its risk profile that you need to assess accordingly, and that's what the commercial banks do. And so once you have a large segment of the market from between SMEs and medium-sized enterprises, that risk profile over the period has been hyped to some extent, and you see a lot of NPLs revolving around this. But when you interrogate the NPL non-performing loans very well, we keep saying that when you do the traceability issues, you realize a lot of them have been as a result of government defaulting on some contractual obligations.
And it's not because I mean, the argument is that, again, you take the loans and you're not paying back. That's why we have the high cost of credit. Your members are not paying the loans
because
back.
The contractor, granted that my members were into construction, and they win get awards of a contract from government, and government is delaying in payment. Of course, it will have an impact on the lender of the facility. That's why we keep saying that disaggregate the NPL percentage. Currently, it's moved from about 24, 23 to about 20%. And therefore, what is happening in that space? When you disaggregate it properly, you will find the defaulters. Today, the credit bureau system is doing a phenomenal work complementary the ID systems, so the traceability to each person's home, individual borrower, it now has improved. In the past, that was one of the risk factors for commercial banks to shy away from lending. So a number of factors are now in our favor. So now with the macro stability that we have found, and going forward with the exchange rate related and disinflation activities happening, we have the firm belief that the banks must wake up.
But I'm saying that, so, I mean, what pressure again are you bringing on government to honor its obligations to? Because most of these contractors, most of these service providers, these are genuine work done.
That's correct.
What pressure are you bringing on government to ensure that these debts are paid so that you can also service your loans, so that that financial intermediation and also dealing with the high cost of credit is addressed?
Well, government in its capacity has come to the realization that if you don't meet your obligations and meet the various obligations, it's a cycle. It will finally come back to hit you in a way. And we all saw it in the previous past years when government defaulted. Today, we believe the resetting of the economy gives it another phase. Let's look positive going forward and see what government will do differently. Pressure, we do advocacy, we expose, and that's one of the issues I keep saying, interrogate the non-performing loans rate of 20%. And if you go, you do the traceability, you find some government institutions in there. What do we do to improve on their performance? Expose them, put the lights in there, and the ones not performing, they will come to the table. And we believe the regulatory work of the various agencies really matter. And that's with the anti-corruption related issues that go around from people like you and the press, also aid in putting pressure on government to fulfill.
Doc, I asked this question because I know that from the industry's perspective as well, you could push and engage government about what is being done to settle these credit. Because again, the connection to the non-performing loans and the high cost of credit, if government is able even to give some commitment to these banks that over a 6-month period or a year it will pay it, that should send some good news to these commercial banks.
That's right.
At the association level, what has been the engagement with government to ensure that these debt owed your members are paid on time?
Part of the engagement, we are sometimes privilege to engage the DIs and the various donor partners. And then in course of our engagement, we try to put in suggestions such that when they engage government on such obligatory issues, they get government to perform as some conditions precedent to other disbursement and then complementary roles by DIs to complement government. And beyond that, what else can you do? You could take government to court on such issues, but perhaps you might lose your subsequent contracts coming forward from there. So it comes to lobbying, it comes to soft punch. We go to the room, engage them in policy formulation, and see.
You think that the fear of being victimized is a major concern for some of your members?
Oh, yes, that don't rule it out. Some members are really concerned about that. Therefore, there's a soft punch that you could trade with government, who's the big player in procurement. And therefore, how do you go about it? But then to engage and hope for the better.
If they hide behind the association, that is quite big, that would not be bad at all.
We've been doing that. We engage on members' behalf. We have clusters. That's why we have sectors. And within the sectors, some players who have serious concerns regarding their bills, we advocate when we meet. And we sit on some institutional boards. We take advantage of that to engage the various CEOs. And in the current situation that the new government took charge, it claims it needed some time to do some auditing, forensic auditing, buying time. But the impact is there. But we believe we've seen the signals of recovery, and that is confidence that we can send to the market.
What are your members telling you in terms of the current situation when it comes to supply of dollars for doing business and getting from the banks? Has the situation really improved, or it is still a challenge?
Yeah, to some extent, we've seen signs of improvement.
In terms of supply? In
terms of supply, you go to the commercial banks, and then there are some delays, unexpected delays, and then your supplies get to the table. Then you are forced to either look into the open market, and all manner of tools these days being deployed for transfers, and then that becomes the option at a price that you need to pay higher than the interbank rates. However, we see it as part of the market failures to reforms. So the stability that we've attained, or the seeming stability as a result of the appreciation, it's an economic model. So it comes with some market failures. How is the BOG and the other associated regulatory authorities seeking to correct those market failures? You look at the bigger aggregate benefit. So the cedi dropped, the cedi appreciated, we're seemingly playing between 12 and 13. What is the bigger picture? What is the benefit across board? What is inflation doing? So the market failures that are spikes coming up, then you look for other tools of intervention to control it. That is why we speak into the issue of the role of the regulators, creating the right conducive environment to aid government correct these market failures that are popping up, like the liquidity position for the dollars for transfers, and how are we handling it. We've engaged the governor, give us insight on how he's treating the remittances, the exchange rate movement, and the Forex movement, and the various rules, enforcement of the various rules within the commercial banks and the general public. We're seeing progress, and we believe such market failures, as a matter of time, will be corrected.
So I get from you that when it comes to the supply situation, it has improved slightly.
But we're looking at a bigger picture that those market failures should be worked out to be corrected, because we're coming from a position that was not the best. And as you improve, those trajectory will come with its spikes. But you look at the bigger aggregate benefit and then see what interventions you could bring in to correct the market failures. And we believe strongly they are on course. Let's give them a little more time within the peak season and all the way to February. Let's see how it performs.
Are you worried about the tightening of the Forex market rules? Because, I mean, every business wants some space to work, wants some space to be able to freely do things around. And that is why even the Apples of this world want a tax-free haven to site their headquarters. Look at the money that they make.
Yeah.
But, I mean, is it a necessary evil, or it has one way or the other affected your business? The documentations, the restrictions, how much you can withdraw, payment of checks into your account, you cannot. All these things, how have your members who are in the export industry, I know they've come at your door, knocking your door, do something for us.
So the question is, what is the larger aggregate benefit? We all come back to say we went to South Africa, the level of circulation of foreign funds are limited. You go to China, wherever you have, we all have the stories. They pay the price once upon a time. And therefore, such reforms comes at a price. But if you look at the larger collective benefit into the future, is it worth paying that price to correct those market failures and those discomforts that arises as a result of this? Because in the past, the absolute liberty that gave you that libertarian space to do whatever you did had an impact. Was it punitive? Was the aggregate worse off? Is this better? So you've got to look at it, reflect on it positively and see what the larger picture will be. And I call it a few market failures that could be perfected into the years. And therefore, it's a matter of time. We needed such strong, enforceable rules to correct the market failures of the past. And therefore, let's give them an opportunity to pay.
That isn't not coming at a cost to your members.
It's coming at a price. That's why I said it's coming at a price.
But the time when they complain about it, will be coming to the cost of doing business.
Yes.
This slight laxity could have helped them a lot.
But look at the trade-offs. What are the trade-offs? You got inflation rates trending down. You got reasonable stability. For the last 2-3 months, you have a policy rate going down, eventually to affect lending and access to funding. Domestic revenue is suffering at the cost of all these trends. But the larger confidence in the economy puts a posture and therefore gives confidence back to the business community to be more daring to create jobs. Those are the trade-offs you got to look at in the positive direction. And this is how we're looking at it. And when we engage, this is what we say.
Let's look at the currency performance or the exchange rate performance as well. We saw the earlier year doing so well. Just the third quarter, we've seen some sustained blips in terms of the performance.
Yes.
I mean, you guys are on the market. Yes. How are things right now when it comes to the performance of the cedi? We've seen some slight slowdown in the rate of depreciation.
Yes.
I don't know about the business community, how's the situation right now as we speak when it comes to the performance of the Ghana cedi?
So then we look at the data. First, you've got to go back to the data and see the information being turned out by the BOG about the reserves, about the various intervention. Is it reassuring to give you confidence that the floating rate that is happening within 12 to 13 is sustainable? What are the factors underpinning it? Does it give you assurance into the future for purposes of planning? Because it all comes back to planning, predictive planning, in your trend analysis, then that gives you comfort. Yes, so once for the period, seen the reserves as demonstrated by the Bank of Ghana and other factors playing out, then we keep asking ourselves, so what are the possible derailing factors? That's why I go back to the role of the regulator playing, or the regulatory agencies playing the right roles. Because if a regulatory entity, example, the Standards Authority, knows very well that standards are low and therefore it will affect pricing. And if it will affect pricing, it has implication on the market in terms of competitiveness. Shoddy goods coming in because the cedi is reasonably stable and therefore cheaper products coming in. It's affecting some other factories in there. To go for job, domestic revenue will go down and the cycle goes on. So we engage in to see what the derailing factors will be. And when we engage government, and when we send our proposal for the tax, for the budget, we highlight such and ask government, could you maintain this or could you relook at this? Are your officers in the agency performing, are their eyes on the ball or they are looking elsewhere, looking for their own gains? Then we try to prompt government to look at it. Because at this stage with the development of what we've seen so far, the next stage should be the role of the regulatory authorities, mandates having a sync with what the BOG and the fiscal discipline that is happening from the Ministry of Finance.
And so I get from you that there's been some fair stability.
That's correct.
That gyration has slowed.
That trajectory has been positive.
I knew that your members in the association had complained in the past about those official rates at the ports.
Yes.
And they're not in sync with the commercial bank's rate and the Bank of Ghana. What is the situation as we speak right now? I knew the Bank of Ghana tried to correct that with the recent directives.
Yes.
Are the port authorities enforcing it? Are their shipping lines enforcing that? Or they are still giving their different rates from what the commercial banks and then the Bank of Ghana is?
So that goes back to another regulatory authority, the Shippers Authority. So So then you ask the question, what is the cheapest authority doing with that money?
Is it happening? Because the Bank of Ghana gave the correct directive to that effect.
Yes, and I know they have reforms in their laws that gives them that biting power. And to date, we know there are some engagement, and actually we could see some trends in reforms in terms of the various fees being charged in dollars, being charged in cedis. And therefore, we expect the regulatory authority to enforce the law to the letter. We haven't gotten a 100% compliance yet.
So some people are not complying with the rate issue.
So it comes back to the subject that you used to do things an old way, and all of a sudden there's a new...
The confirmation I just want to get from you that some of the lines in the regulatory agents at the port are not complying with the Bank of Ghana.
It's not 100% yet, and I said so. And therefore, I asked the role of the regulator. And our own friend, Professor Jampo, I thought I saw him on a show or one other show, speaking to the subject matter, seeking to enforce those laws. That is why I go back to the subject matter. At this stage, the government needs to sit down with the regulatory authorities, look at each mandate, and then do a surgical operation on each mandate to see that are they working accordingly. And that is what will aid the competitiveness and create the reasonable market for the various macro stability and the sustainability of such stability to work. It comes back to the regulation.
But if they are not doing that, it is hurting Ghanaians.
Absolutely.
Because it still makes operations here expensive.
Absolutely.
Compared to your peers in the other
That is why I gave you examples of what exactly, and I did this in a recent summit when we saw the rubber industry in the Western region going through a lot of difficulties. A lot of these factories are not getting raw materials to process. Whilst the factories are sitting down, there's a large export of raw rubber out. Same is we said of the cashew industry. And it's ongoing.
They are not getting
sufficient raw materials
to actually process. So these are factories that are there,
and
but they can't get raw materials.
And there are regulatory authorities, they have significant laws in their acts to help them control this. So I'm drilling into the role of the various agencies to complement the gains of fiscal prudence happening in So once they do their works very well, there will be significant IGFs that will come to them that will ease the pressure on the finance minister. And that IGFs, internal generated funds, could be used for other projects. So there are roles they could play. They need to work to the situation. And I've given a number of examples to look at.
So what I get from you that these are factories that are there,
yes,
but they are struggling to get
sufficient raw material.
So
that's correct.
They have, but not enough.
So therefore, it underplays or defeats the 24-hour agenda. Because if you do not control the export of those raw materials that you could add value to, the factories will go idle.
Oh, so what I get from it, these farmers are selling to some foreigners who are coming in to buy them huge trucks and sacks.
Yes, and that
neighboring countries.
And that is the informality. So there's a regulatory authority, like the municipal chief executive and his team within that region. You've got to be sure that such players are well structured in your formal enterprises. And therefore, it aids commercial banks to target them, to support them to grow. But when there's a large informality being played out, transparency, and then the ability to sell to unauthorized persons to then make more money out of it for export at the expense of the factories becomes an issue. So the holistic system. Today, one of the biggest achievements of this government is to bring some reasonable stability in the macro front and the prudence within the first year. However, don't you forget, this is not totally new. We've done 40 years of IMF out of the 68 years of Ghana's existence and of 17 trials. So our concern into the next year, that this is the first year of the government within the shadows of IMF, what is going to happen next year? We are optimistic anyway, but we'll be cautious to see how it plays out. And therefore, this is not totally new. The new element is that the performance of the city changed the dynamics in the opposite way. Now, it exposes the role of the environment. So therefore, what do you do to the environment? How will the regulatory authorities of all forms and shapes, playing from the municipal, from the district, all the way to the national, how are they playing from the ports to EPA, to Standards Authority, to control the environment of production to stimulate productivity?
Are your members not just running away from competition or paying the farmers the right price? Because if I am a cashew farmer in the north, I'll look at getting the best value for the work that I've done. If an industry in Ghana here is not giving me the right price, I will obviously sell it to somebody coming from outside giving me a good price.
So that comes to another subject matter of the role.
Your members don't want to pay the right price for these inputs.
No, so, George, you're going to reforms. You're coming from a particular position, worse position, you are resetting and correcting. Once you're doing this process, there will be some failures that you need to correct. And therefore, that's why I'm insisting on the role of agencies. So, per example you gave, a state agency like Ghana Exchange Commodities and the Ghana Buffer Stock Agency must be in the forefront of mopping up and giving market price for the cashew that the farmer is producing, hand-holding them, structuring the process of purchases and supporting them, and of taking this product deliberately to feed the factories. Where the factories do not have it, or where the farmers are itchy to sell, you store them. This is formality. Formalizing the informal sector, deliberately pumping it into industry, perfecting the supply chain for production, productivity, and a 24-hour economy, as has been tabled. So if you don't structure this properly in the reforms, it gets to a stage, the patience of the people will be run out. The goodwill will be out of the box. So this is the time, after this excellent position of stability, we are emphasizing on the role of the agencies and the regulatory authority. So, per example, Ghana Commodity Exchange to step up to the plate. Government to see them as one of the agencies that will aid him to mop up all these excesses, put it between the Ghana buffer stock and feed a school project. So it's a cycle, and somebody must think and connect the dots in the minds of the players and the decision makers to foster deliberate progress and productivity. That is what will bring about sustainability.
So another thing I want to look at is about the decline in inflation. How is that feeding into the cost of doing business as we speak right now?
Yeah.
Power. Yeah. And all those things. But we'll take a short commercial break, and this is a PM Express Business Edition, looking at the state of doing business in Ghana, engaging the president of the Ghana Association of Ghana Industries, Dr. Humphrey Yimdake, a businessman, industrialist, and the president of the association as well, as we look at all these issues wrapped up here on PM Express Business Edition. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition as we look at the cost of the state of doing business in Ghana here today through the eyes of a business person, industrialist, and the president of the Association of Ghana Industries, Dr. Humphrey Yimdake, engaging the pulse of the economy when it comes to the current environment in doing business. Is it getting better with all these improved macroeconomic numbers, or the value is still the same? I'm engaging the president of AGI, Dr. Humphrey Yimdake. Inflation rate going down. Yes. Some excitement for industries?
Yes, it's excitement because we do an inflation target model, and that is underpinning economic model you run to manage the entire system. So if that target is going, it comes at a price. It comes at the price of liquidity in circulation, and that's one of the major tools they use. However, you will need to really work for the little money you gain, and it got to be valuable to you when you seek to spend. So yes, it's exciting to see the inflation going down. Some economists will be of a different school of thought anyway, but as long as that is the model we've chosen, to what extent can that trigger development? And what sort of development? In the last engagement with the governor, I asked him the question. So with all these mandates, there's one mandate that we need to figure out how to stimulate. That's job creation. Because once you do this inflation target modeling, and then you squeeze or you deploy monetary policy tools that aid you to attain it, there are trade-offs, and job creation can be one of them. And therefore, when your job creation becomes one of the fallouts, whilst the city is seeking to stabilize, and then the inflation is driving down, the third angle is job creation. How do you figure out to create jobs? Then it comes back to the ecosystem. How competitive is it? Because the stable exchange rate leads to, in an highly import-dependent economy, leads to a lot of cheap goods coming in. Do you have significant intermediary factories that could do value additions to create jobs? Then that becomes one of the trend. And I think in one of the engagement of Guzi Tando on the 24-hour economy, that is the trajectory. And then you ask, what are the comparative or competitive advantages that we have? And that's where we seek agriculture as one of the routes to push this agenda and bring about the reforms. But for the agriculture to be successful, bringing about stability in the supply chain, the regulatory authorities that interplay with those sectors, EPA, what do you call the role of the various agriculture regulatory authorities like the PPRD, we call them, and then there you go in for Food and Drugs Authority, matter in the ecosystem to bring about competition and competitiveness so that the imports coming in can come in, but they should come in at the right price, at the right quality, and then we can together compete on the market.
Doc, how has this reduction impacted on consumption of your products locally? I got the indication from maybe the chamber, that is the Beverage Association of Ghana, saying that sales is still not doing that well for them.
Yeah.
What about, I know for you, you still do inputs, raw material for a lot of businesses out there, so it could vary a little bit.
Yeah.
Has this, because there was also an argument about the cost of goods being high when inflation was high and all the rest. Has this reduction in inflation impacted that much on the consumption pattern, the consumption of your goods that you are producing?
Yeah, it still goes back to the theory that you're practicing, the inflation target model. And what is the inflation target model seeking to do when you deploy monetary policy tools? Taking excess funding in the cash or liquidity, excess liquidity in the system. And this excess liquidity that are taken out of the system, of course, will affect consumption. That is the theory. So as they deploy that, of course, there'll be a trade-off. So consumption will, of course, be limited. And that's why we are asking them, stimulate the economy. How do you stimulate it? If you are doing construction, you could stimulate to significant construction. And that is why you watch government deliberately is coming with road construction project on a massive scale and complement it with agriculture, which will be a food basket to complement that aspect. It's a deliberate strategy to stimulate the economy through construction and the food basket. So for now, per the question, as long as you are running the inflation target model, where excess liquidity is in the system, the BOG will deploy tools to suck it up, and that will affect consumption.
So I get you from there that sales is also not doing that much.
Well, it cannot be excessive sales. You may not.
Has it dropped because the Ghana Association of Beverage Association was talking about dropping by 70%.
And that is what I've demonstrated.
Is that a situation for industries as well that sales has dropped as well?
That's what I've demonstrated to you through the theory of the monetary
But the reality on the ground is
absolutely once
consumption is low, sales has dropped.
Giving you the inflation target model that you desire, it comes at a price where liquidity is out, and therefore by virtue of that liquidity being shrink, it will affect consumption. So yes, consumption is dropped.
But how are you guys managing? Because when you produce at that high cost, and I'll come to the cost of production, the cost of doing business, and consumption is not moving that much, that is an added cost to your operations.
Yeah, so you realize that some operations will scale down. So if you have a bottling line that is doing about 5-6 lines, they will drop to 3. Okay, and then the other aspect is that once they've dropped to 3, and I gave you an example of the parallel products that are coming in from Western neighboring countries like Guinea, like the beverage industries that are flagging in. So as they are coming in because of cheap cost of import, it's reducing productivity. However, these cheap products come in to occupy a portion of your market. So they come to compete with the later production. So production and industries are having a hard time. They are not at their optimum level because of such challenges. That's why we are really drumming up the case of the regulatory authorities to perfect the system, to complement the work the BOG and the Ministry of Finance is doing to stimulate.
But Mr. Daka, some will say this is quite serious. You have hard people you need to pay.
Yes.
You are producing because of an economic correction.
Yes.
Consumption has been affected. You are getting counterfeit goods being brought onto the market. These goods are, regulatory authorities are not doing that much to protect local industries. And you have this challenge as well. I mean, how are you guys surviving in the midst of these?
All the goods that are counterfeit.
Okay.
Some are good, but the pricing and the invoice declaration and their complications
makes it cheaper.
Make it cheaper.
But I'm saying that how are you surviving? Because sales are not that good. You have a high cost of doing business. You have other goods coming in that are dodging the tax system, and obviously an imported Coca-Cola is way cheaper than the Coca-Cola being produced here.
That's right.
And at the end of the day, and I'll come to the taxes issues, the GRA, the tax man is coming that, Mr. Dake, your industry, pay the taxes.
That's correct.
How are you guys surviving in the midst of all these challenges?
So with these gains as a result of the CD, you realize that import becomes cheaper. So when companies are in such difficulties, you realize their models or the economic models or their business models will vary. Once upon a time, some of the enterprises of beverage industries never imported. But today, if he realizes that he's going through stiff competition on a product line and it becomes cheaper to import, he imports to complement his market share to make sure he maintains it. So the survival tactics will be modification of operations. So if I do total integrated production line, today I cut off a number of them and shut off some and do some part of it as production. It might be, if it was 100% manufacturing line, I reduce to do 30%, okay, so that I can still survive and maintain my customer. So what the survival tactics becomes models and modification of existing business models that he started with as a result of competition. That's the only way you can survive on the market.
Let's look at the cost of doing business, the cost of manufacturing, the cost of producing this pen in Ghana here.
Yes.
How's the situation as we speak right now when it comes to the cost of doing business and production-wise for your members and industries?
So you look at the number of factors.
Major challenge, right?
Yeah, it's still a major challenge. Until recent, we all knew the biggest disrupting element of variables was the exchange rate. Today, to the extent that we've gained some reasonable stability over the past 6 months, the next one is the cost of power.
Yeah.
And that is also another element in the room. But today we juxtapose that with the reliability of power that is coming to our various factories and our various homes. At what cost in terms of reliability? What are the other trade-offs that you could use to mitigate the cost of power? I'm not in any way saying that the cost of power as it stands today is correct. It's still higher in the sub-region. We believe it must be corrected. There are interventions. Some are medium to long term. But in the short term, how do you survive on it? You've got to look out for trade-offs. You may not be getting the volumes in terms of what we call the economic of skills to reduce it down because of the market size and the various competition coming, even as a result of cheap product. So how do you mitigate it? I mentioned modification of business concepts. You might not do full line of manufacturing. So yeah, manufacturing enterprises are still going through hard times. We know we are not out of the woods. We should all come to the realization it's just 9 months or 10 months from the past regime. So we are not out of the woods. The debt position is still standing. They are still managing it. So they are still underpinning issues. So we are not out there, but the prospect, as we see it now, gives us some confidence. And granted that this threshold and this trajectory can be maintained for another year, we can then come back to the table and give you a better judgment end of 2026. Because by then we would have seen another year of a non-IMF observance, not to the latter as it is now. Because like I mentioned earlier on, it's been 40 years of IMF as a country. And under 68 years of independence.
I'll come back to you on your thought. But Mr. Daka, some will say that the bit about the reliability of power, i.e. cost. Reliable power should be a given. It shouldn't be something that should be seen as, what do you call it, a luxury.
Yes.
So the argument that is made for the cost of power, some will say that it's very difficult sometimes to accept in the sense that which one comes first, a chicken and egg issue. I need to get reliable power as industry so I can produce, employ, and pay my taxes.
Yes.
That should not be seen as a luxury when I'm getting that.
Very correct. But when you discuss the case of Ghana, you shouldn't forget about the past. And because for reliability, it comes at an investment in assets. It comes in an investment in infrastructure that will be reliable and consistent to give you that said reliability, which shouldn't be a luxury, but should be a given. Then number two, you should also realize that IPPs, when we disbandle the whole line from VRA When it was one ECG, disbandled it, we had a generating plant, the transmitting, and then the distribution lines. Then you got to ask yourself, at generation, what did we do over the last couple of decades? What has been the phenomena of circumstances of contractual relationships, PPAs, take or pay? We have capacity charges that are underutilized, but once they have been signed as an agreement, the capacity charge is part of what is transmitted through your tariffs. So it's all part of the agreement over the period. And as you seek to correct it through a deliberate effort, you need not forget about the past, but you need to carry that pain and exercise patience to correct it. So we have come from a very checkered position on the power front or the power industry. And as we correct it gradually, it comes at a price, and today we're paying the same price because the correction is not yet through. The debt positions are still hanging, and the process is still ongoing.
But some will argue that still the fact that the cost of power is quite high, and you industries, manufacturing firms do consume a lot. You'll not be doing the 2 units or 3 units. You'll be doing 1,000 units and all the rest. So irrespective of a 1.1% spike, some are saying that the cost of power in the region, in Ghana here, is quite expensive.
Very true. I agree with you. It is expensive, and I stated that, and I re-echo the same position, that the cost of power is expensive. But as at stage, would you seek to have some reliability and gradual improvement that will shed off the deliberate impact on production that will distort and disrupt your economic front? So it calls for significant planning and strategy to walk this path. For the John Mahama government in the last era, on this era, there's significant goodwill that is still moving on with. Such goodwill, you take advantage of it to front load some of the investment and strategize until the events of real elections come to your doorstep. It becomes significant decision-making positions. They have been part of the complications of the power industry in the past. So yes, once he sits in to correct it, he takes both the gain and the benefit. So because of the historical issues on the power front, on the PPAs that are captured, the capacity charge related agreements that we signed that are not perfect, and now they are seeking to negotiate and correct these wrongs. So we're still paying the price, and then the underpinning issues that we are not out of the woods. There are some debts there, and we need to correct them gradually whilst we balance it. Power in Ghana is still expensive. We haven't deployed significant renewable energy, and the laws that gives you the net effect of transmitting the excess solar power into the grid has not been perfected. So the infrastructure is still needs a lot of interventions and injections. Our export market through the transmission lines like Greatco needs further injections. And then now that which is going to worsen it off is the galamsey and the 30% input of power that goes into treatment of water. Further complications. So that is another big kettle in the room to be managed.
I mean, we were told recently by a Greatco that there isn't no doom so. But for industries, what is the state of reliable power supply as
That's correct.
Speak today?
Yes. So you could see they might not be doom so, but you might need 170 kilowatts power that should run to your factory to power your product. And granted that you are doing 130, therefore some machines in your room or machines in your factory cannot operationalize or cannot be effective. What does it mean? You lose time. The 130 coming in is coming at a cost anyway. So government will be losing because you cannot get effect. So factories are not excited about it. So therefore it calls for distribution of factories in locations that when I come to put my factory in your locality and I realize the power will be a challenge, it becomes difficult to deploy great jobs.
So there is no doom so, and that's all, but you are not getting the right voltage or the right amount of power to work?
In some jurisdiction, yes, and therefore it calls for infrastructure adjustment and investment. How do you do it? Do you front load it? Do you stagnate it? At what price? And how do you create jobs? Because I've told you, at the tail end of it, within the mandate of the Bank of Ghana, Forex stability, inflationary, and job creation is part of their mandate. How do you seek to do that and create productivity and make sure the economy is stimulated sufficiently? Those are the complications.
But you are not getting situations where you guys go to work and a day there's no supply at all?
It happens. When it happens...
Apart from a localized listener, are you having a situation where you're still having those blips?
No,
in terms of supply?
not to that extent. That I can testify to that. And we've seen the grade and we've seen some location, not to that extent. And I therefore support the cause to say that there's not doom so. But we need to move beyond that and make sure reliability and the effective power to each household and into each factory is sufficient.
Interesting. We'll take a break, Rabbi. This is PM Express Business Edition, engaging the President Association of Ghana Industries, Dr. Humphrey Yimdake, looking at the state of doing business in Ghana here. The argument about it being expensive, and the situation improved now, looking at the current macro situation stabilizing a little bit. This is PM Express Business Edition. We'll be right back after this break. Doing business in Ghana as an industry, as a manufacturing firm, how are these firms surviving? Getting some answers and thought from the president of the Ghana Association of Industries, Dr. Humphrey Yimdake. Let's look at taxes.
Yes.
Has it gotten better? The GRA promised us that they'll be business friendly. It's still gotten out of hand when it comes to taxes. You know, whatever they call it, tax corrected, and all those things.
Yes.
And businesses have complained in the past about how that is knocking them off and all those things, the VAT issues, retail sales, and all the rest. What is the situation as we speak when it comes to taxes?
Well, we've echoed the position of taxes over the past years, and one major one that we have and have high expectation in the coming budget is the VAT reforms. It's one significant tax that
COVID-19
disrupted a number of activities in the form and shape and threshold in which the VAT operated in the past. And it's still operating anyway. But we took cognizance of the minister's intentions and the announcement. And November is almost here. We look forward to the tax reforms with high expectation to help us.
In terms of scrapping the COVID-19?
Well, not only COVID-19, the cascading effect, tax on tax computation, there were withholding tax within the VAT threshold that two enterprises that are operating the same product line. One was piloted with the withholding tax exemptions, withholding tax in the VAT structure, besides the withholding tax that comes in the corporate tax regime that we operate naturally. And besides that, I mentioned the threshold, the cascading effect, the levies, the COVID, and the whole form of structure of the VAT tax. So we're looking forward to that reforms. And considering how he presented it, he demonstrated significant understanding. So the only way out was to give him the opportunity to use the 1 year period to correct it. So that's one of the significant issues we want to see in tax reforms. And other associated tax interventions, and I could name one that he did in the past we had, and it's still running, zero-rated VAT tax on the textile industries. So the textile industries over the period had a zero-rated VAT. It had significant impact on their operation. We also have what we call the VAT deferment for industry. Significant impact. Most of the enterprises or industries surviving now have taken advantage of such interventions. You need such interventions deliberately to help promote. And that is why some textile factories are existing. How do we stimulate that to extend the growth, and most of our African wares and African products can be printed and produced through that, and do a backward integration and start growing cotton to complement the value chain. I recall one of the visits of the chief of staff to Benin with some investors to see and study what is happening in Benin cotton industry, and with a promise to do the same integration in Ghana. We look forward to that intervention. So tax policy can aid a sector of the industry to grow and be sustained. And I've mentioned that of the textile industries that are enjoying it. And I gave you the flip side of what VAT distorted and disrupted our lines. And we're looking forward to those
to that reforms. Correction being
That's correct.
I mean, it's good to get your thought on the 2026 budget expectation. When the minister was in studio here, sitting in that same chair, he talked about he's working on looking at if things work out well, even presenting it in October this year, in terms of the 2026 budget. I mean, for industries, what is the expectation? Is it just the tax issue, or there are other concerns that you want the minister to use this budget to correct when it comes to supporting the industrial sector?
Yes, the tax issue is one significant one that will give, with all the gains you've attained, you will need to really give us that further comfort in the tax reforms that are coming. It will double our confidence level, and then it could scale up productivity and correct the wrongs and the market failures in there. That is one of policy direction. The policy direction that will stimulate the economy in terms of a big push is one of them. What do you seek to do? Where is the funding source coming from? The deployment mechanism. Another option that we, as to whether that will come in the budget or not, we'll need to discuss it. The localization and creating local content within some regulatory authorities deliberately to support local industry. He did a couple of them in the current budget of the sanitary parts. Remember? Are you tracking it?
Is it working?
You should be telling me.
I'm asking, is it working?
To the extent that there are
no, tell me, is it working?
We have challenges there.
What are the challenges?
So we need to discuss it because in there we got to first look at the directive of the policy to make sure local
producers. Is it working as we speak right now? Is it being enforced?
No, there are still some challenges in there.
So it means that they are not enforced. It's not happening, right?
It's not happening to the letter. So we got to make sure it happens so that local producers will benefit. Who are those benefiting currently from that policy? And then we go on the school uniform projects. Who are those benefiting? Are the factories benefit? Are the ladies producing school uniform benefit? Or people have picked it up and they're importing products into the country pretending they are producing here? If you seek to still do the same old thing, then nothing is going to change. So we need to take all these policies, put the light on it, and demonstrate to the president whether his policies are working. And we'll look for such more policies in the incoming budget, and we'll put light on it to demonstrate whether the policies are working to stimulate the economy and create a 24-hour economic model. If you could not make sure the sanitary pads and the various school uniforms are being produced, creating the low-hanging fruits by producing here. If this is not working, then we have a challenge with the 24-hour economy that the president
Are industries ready for the much talked about 24-hour economy?
To the extent that it's a policy, and we have capacity to modify our business models to adjust once there is demand and there's a correlation between demand and productivity.
I thought by now we should be moving to activation than whether if or that.
No, we are. And I gave you
the financing model and all those things. The other things that need to be in place to aid and help. If those things are still not in place, then someone say that
the financing
we should
models,
forget about it then.
No, the financing models, and I gave you the example of Gessel now being used as a collateral. It stimulates the market. It gives room to industries to go for funding.
Is ready for 24
We are ready. We are ready.
If the system is supporting you to go live.
Is not fully supported. That is why the regulatory authorities must complement government's agenda. If they are working in isolation, that is why the rubber industry will be failing today. That's why the cashew industry will be failing today, because stability in the raw material supply is a challenge because somebody is not enforcing the regulatory in its act to make sure that you don't export rubber acetates, you process before you go.
So I get from you that corrects the inherent challenges before you roll out this 24-hour economy.
Well, you got to do.
Otherwise, it will not work.
You got to work hand in hand. As you correct some, it motivates you to do more. And where you feel you see elements that are frustrating, flush them out, expose them, and let's help government attain the goal.
Ghana Investment Promotion Center wants to attract more FDIs.
Yes.
The plan is that they want to review portions of the Investment Act that has to do with the minimum capital requirement for doing business. And they are going to enforce that very soon. Industries, Association of Ghana, what is your take on this proposal?
Well, we currently are in engagement with the GIPC. We've had a couple of meetings. My team tells me we're putting together a position paper to be submitted to the lawyers in the GIPC and explain the implications of the further liberalization agenda by GIPC and the cohorts that are supporting him to do same. Because what they seek to do, we have already extensively liberalized. And we all know the implication of this extent of liberalization, and therefore Ghana has become more of a retail shop, big retail shop, where imports dominate all our operations as against productivity, irrespective of the gift of God on resources that we have. So if this action of GIPC will further make it easy and liberalize the economy further without conditions to tweak, to give some equity strength to indigents and players in the space, then we have a cause to worry. So as it stands, we are not too comfortable with the position. We're giving a counter proposal. Where they want to stand with the liberalization as they seek to do it, we're asking for further clauses that will give some equity and fairness to the players and Ghanaians.
Are Ghanaian industries afraid of competition or more of seeking too much over protectionism, if I can use that expression?
I've stated and I repeat it, we are not. But when you play in an unfair environment where regulatory sanctions and regulatory mandates are trampled upon, it derails all your gains and your good intentions of a good business model. And I can suggest to you, and I repeated it, that all the good intentions and the good plans deployed by the Bank of Ghana to attain all these macro gains, and the discipline the Minister of Finance has brought into his books to attain this fiscal prudence, can be derailed once the regulatory authorities look elsewhere and anything is done. What happens is undermines compliance. And once that is the case, everything will be derailed. That is why we are hammering strongly on the roles of the various regulatory authorities, Ghana Free Zones Authority, Food and Drugs Authority, Ghana International Trade Commission, EPA, name them all the way to the districts. So we are asking the regulatory authorities, let me not break them down beyond what I've said, to wake up to the call. Revisit your mandate so that where we need not export raw materials, where we need to add value to it, you support us in your little district, in a little municipality, to add values, to create jobs. That is where we got to start from. It's a resetting agenda, and once that is the case, we need to go back to the base and recorrect it with a bit of pain, but optimism to correct it for the future.
Dr. Humphrey Mdaka, I appreciate your
I'm
time.
grateful.
Time was not our best friend, but I know the debate will still go on, and so what can be done more to improve the regulatory environment for Ghanaian firms so that we can see them grow, expand, and employ more Ghanaians in the country. This has been PM Express Business Edition. I know the debates will go on in your homes and in your offices about what more can be done to actually improve the environment for Ghanaian businesses and industries that are operating here in Ghana. This has been PM Express Business Edition. Have a great day.